how do we, okay, housing for cohesive urban communities. Last night, discussion, one area came out is, okay, how do we make sure that the development is inclusive? How do we make sure that everybody gets the benefit? So if you would like to create inclusive communities, forming neighborhoods, and housing going to be a vital area. So we have a very interesting panel once again. Shankar representing probably the world largest property management, advisory, anything to do with property, that's easier said. Nana, everyone knows. Lalit is senior advisor to UN Habitat. And then we have Mr. Nihal Fonseca, Fernando, Deputy Director, UDA, and he's also the point man for Port City. So Nihal is going to share with us, what are the housing developments that will take place. And then Senarath Bandara is a finance director of a company which is owned by UDA and NHDA, but they act, even though it is owned by government, they act like a private company. And they have a very interesting model to discuss. And we have two panelists joining the panel. Jeremy Huxtable is a CEO, head of Dialogue Enterprise. He will discuss the technology. And finally, Shivanka has over close to 6 years of experience. Now he's an independent consultant, but he has 6 years of experience developing multi-sector housing. And our session chair today, this session is Helene Galapai, CEO of LearnAsia. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel. Put your hands together and welcome our panel. And over to you, Gaini. You have 2 hours, correct?
Thanks,
approximately.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody for coming back. So we won't punish you by waiting. Let's get started. We have a bunch of presentations. I propose we start with those immediately because we're going to hear a range of things. We will start with Shankar, who will talk a lot about the international experience. And then we will move closer to home and talk a little bit about process, for example, when we come to Lalit. So Shankar, over to you. You've got 10 minutes, Lakshman.
Thanks for the opportunity. Today I'm going to talk about inclusive housing. And I've given only 10 minutes. I'll try to do justice within that 10 minutes, covering various aspects of inclusive housing across our globe. How would I move? Sorry. It's not connected. No.
Is it possible to continue until Shankar without? While the tech people get this sorted?
Yeah, sorry about that. I took this photo when I was in Hong Kong last month. And that time I was wondering how the city transformed into such a magnitude of buildings, infrastructure, and housing. And I wanted to understand how it looked, let's say about 20, 30 years back. And I Googled it, and I got this answer. This is like any other small town across any developing countries. And look at the transformation it had over a period of, let's say, about 20 to 30 years. And this is how cities are transforming. And cities transform over a period of time. And ideally, we have seen cities transform over a period of 25 to 30 years. And this is how Hong Kong looked some time back, and currently it is looking like this. Just after this excellent lunch, let's have a little fun. Can you guess which city is this? This is also, again, 20, 30 years back. Someone said, right, yeah, this is Shanghai. Can you guess this one? Here you go. Beijing, the same very road is transformed into a really a high transportation network. This is my favorite city. All of us would know this is nothing but Singapore. And cities across the globe have transformed over a period of time. And this is, any guesses for this city? This is KL. And we have a lot of examples, a lot of cities. And this is Dubai. And look at this city 20 years back. Look at the number of cars, and the open space is completely occupied by cars. Now it is looking like this. Look at the mass rapid transport system and all other things which free up the open space, and this is city. So as part of JLL, we track a lot of cities across globe, and currently we are tracking about 300 cities. And of these 300 cities, most of the cities are competing with each other. And why it is competing with each other? Because of three reasons. One is the urbanization rate in which the cities are going in, because of globalization and the technology interventions. So these are the three things which all these cities are looking at. Why? Because to attract capital investments towards that particular city for its growth, and all these countries, most of these countries do have multiple cities within them, and each and every city is competing with each of the cities to attract this capital investment which is coming into those countries and cities. And competitiveness is the in thing nowadays of all the top 300 cities where JLL focuses on. All these 300 cities are tracked based on population, based on GDP, based on corporate presence, and based on lot many other parameters. Most of these cities are populous, productive, connected cities, home to a lot of MNCs, capitals, and skills, and Colombo is one of them. And Colombo is at the 100 to 300 range. However, Colombo needs to pick up to reach up to the 50s range. We also did, every 2 years, we do this Global Real Estate Transparency Index. And this year, Sri Lanka makes it its debut at 69th rank out of 109 markets we track across the globe. And it is much ahead of Macau, Pakistan, and Myanmar. And we also anticipate that when we come back with the next index, that is on 2018, Sri Lanka has got a lot of potential to move up the ladder. All these cities talk the same language: livability, sustainability, business friendliness, transparency, governance, talent, and the technology. Of all, livability is the prime and the key factor for most of these cities. Of course, all these cities do face challenges. Most of these challenges are the leadership challenges because of the fragmentation of institutions, because of the continuity in leadership. This is the primary challenge which most of these cities face. Apart from that, you have risk mitigations, the natural disaster, how you react to those. Other than that, you have transparency, the business friendliness, how you attract investments. The branding is another challenge most of the cities face. Of course, you have this infrastructure, transportation, traffic congestion, and the funding issues which are coming up. And another important factor or the challenge which a lot of these cities are facing is the emergence of multiple CBDs. And Colombo might soon come up with kind of multiple CBDs across the city. And most of these cities are facing this issue of having multiple CBDs. How are we going to address? And the last but not the least is the affordability. That it's about the informal housing, how the residents have got access to public housing and the inclusive housing for that matter. To look at what's happening across the globe, just I'll take you through a few slides which talk about what are the various initiatives across globe. My Chinese colleagues tell me that this is an interesting initiative in China. There are 3 components to it. I'll not read it because it's a tongue twister. It's difficult for me to pronounce it. The number one, the government, the local government provide land to the estate developer free of cost. In turn, the estate developer will develop housing at a preset housing pricing with a subsidized rate to targeting only to the lower middle income households. Second is more towards the rent subsidized model. The second initiative is towards rent subsidized model and only catering to the urban poor and the urban poor households. And the third, of course, is on the subsidy which is provided in cash for the household who have already bought the house from the market. And in 2015, they have done about 7.72 million houses in China with an investment of $250 billion. Next, this is in Singapore. We know that 70% of Singapore was informal housing in the early 1960s, whereas after 20 years, till the time it reached 1980, the Singapore was quarter free in the sense no slums at all. It's all been converted into formal housing. So 20 years, they've converted Singapore into more towards formal housing. Then they did a lot about the infrastructure activities. So what I'm trying to say is housing was the first priority in some of the countries. So 82% of Singapore's population is living in public flats. Of that, 93% is owning their own flat. And Singapore also talked about a lot more about the policy inventions and interventions in terms of how the government departments work, because in Singapore they don't work in silos. It is no fragmentation in terms of responsibilities. It is one entity which is involved in inclusive housing. And the emphasis is also given for ownership than the rental housing. And in 2015, they've built about 16,000 units. In United Kingdom, each and every site which is there for development should provide at least 25% of the development should go into the affordable housing segment, which can come from a social renters housing scheme, or it can come from an equity model. And in 2015, they had given about 45,000 houses delivered. So in India, where I come from, we talk about the Housing for All scheme by the Modi government, and there are about 4 verticals within the Housing for All scheme. First is the in-situ slum redevelopment program, where using the land as a resource, because land is available plenty in terms of occupied by the slum dwellers in the city area. So with the private participation and how to incentivize the private participation is the first vertical within the Housing for All scheme of India. Second is the affordable housing through credit-linked subsidy, because government gives subsidy to the urban poor to buy housing. And third is the affordable housing in partnership. So government also will develop housing projects in participation with the private sector. And fourth is the subsidy for beneficiary-led individual house construction. So if you want to build a house on your own, you get a subsidy or an amount to build on your own. Also, there are a lot of other initiatives in other countries. So Turkey is looking at creating a housing agency which will pull or assemble all the land owned by various departments, and it has created about 4% of the entire land used into urban land which can be used for housing. And Philippines looks at having penalty for the idle land, and Hong Kong is looking at more of creating satellite townships, moving the poor outside the city and giving a smart connectivity, and so on. The older stocks are being converted for the lower income household, and Spain gives an extra additional FSI for that. And we have a lot of key challenges. If you look at Sri Lanka, the total mortgage to GDP ratio is only about 6%, whereas if you look at a lot of other countries, it's 88% in UK, 81% in USA, and in India is again 9%. So a lot of challenges. One is the lowest penetration in the mortgage finance market, and non-availability of cheaper and long-term finance. The focus is always given on the high-end luxury residential, and all the developments do not cater to all spectrum of the population. So I'll just end this slide with 5 key takeaways. One is very important for us to unlock the land supply within the city so that it can be used for inclusive housing. We need to improve the financing of the public who can buy house in the market. And third is the inclusive planning, where a lot of developments can happen where you can have more participation from the EWS and the LIG. Next is the private participation I touched upon earlier, and the value engineering. This is very, very important. Because of technology, we can reduce about 30% of the construction cost, and also about construction time to about 40 to 50%, because Sri Lanka, the construction cost in Sri Lanka is one among the highest in this particular region. So this is skyline of Colombo, because it has been transitioning for a long time, and we need to take good examples. If you don't take good examples of the world, we would end up creating these squatters and slums. So I know that it's, I can see that stop sign over there. So thank you all. So I'm open for all discussions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Shankar. Naina, I think your 10 minutes are on. And we'll come back to some of the models Shankar was talking about, related to land, rent subsidies, freeing up land, policy options. And
presentation
yeah. That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
No, that's not it. I have it on a pen. I'm sorry, I don't want this 30 seconds to count.
That's fine. Let's actually just go to Shankar with a question, because I think we are wasting time on this, yeah? Shankar, you were talking about freeing up land or giving free land for low middle income housing. You were talking also about rent subsidies. You were talking about allowing everybody to buy at market prices, but giving a targeted cash amount to the people who can't afford it. So you're not distorting the market in a way, but you're having a very targeted subsidy. Freeing up land and those options. What are the pros and the cons from a developing country point of view? Is giving free land an option for us? What's least market distorting?
What we need to do is, these are the models available elsewhere across the globe, and especially in this particular region. Most of these models are from countries like China, India, but it is not true that all models would apply good in Sri Lankan's context. So we need to look at what is the availability of land, existing land within the core Colombo area. How to unlock it. So unlocking land is very, very important, because still you can unlock a lot of lands, because in the morning session somebody was mentioning that still a lot of lands being owned by multiple departments. Can we bring all this land into one bucket and bring it under one roof, maybe urban land authority or something like that, because a lot of countries are looking at accumulating or assembling this land and putting under one roof. Probably that will lead to a lot of public-private partnerships. So all these lands, I mean, strategically you can select if the land parcel is so close to the CBD and if it has got a more of a commercial viability, that can be used for more of commercial developments. If it is little inside, give a good connectivity and it can be used for a development which is aiming towards the middle income and the lower income housing. And also it can be subsidized with a package of land parcels, one at the city center, one at little away from the city, and 3-4 land parcels can be clubbed together and given it to a private developer who in turn can develop.
So not necessarily co-located, but...
Yeah, exactly. So those are the models available that can be looked at in the Colombo context.
Okay, and we'll come back to land again. Nayana, thank you for the
Thank
patience.
you. Sorry for the delay. So let me just jump right in. I wanted to bring this discussion kind of back home and also kind of pose a few questions and position this, because housing and how we deal with housing in a comprehensive way is something where we still have not converged on. It's something where we still have an ongoing debate. And I thought it would be refreshing to just kind of table that debate and kind of incite some views. So as I said yesterday, our urban settlements are clearly expanding and this sprawl is out of control. This is the satellite image I referred to yesterday about where people live. But what's interesting is this pattern of development that is ribboning out from the core into the suburbs and the hinterland. And this is the nature of our sprawl. It's not really pretty. And this is problematic. It's not organized, it's not structured properly, and this is not really sustainable. The single-family detached house is still the dominant housing model in Sri Lanka. This is down High Level Road. The character of the housing, you see how we are eating in to our landscapes. This is Kotte a couple of years ago, and it's largely still the same. And you can take a picture of anywhere, any suburban area, and this is basically the pattern you'll see. And we obviously have a very, a thriving land subdivision and sale industry, and we're incrementally parceling out, most cities into 6 purchase and selling it off. And this this fragmentation of land is a serious problem when we're trying to get higher density development. We also need to think about what really is happening in our cities. The image on the right shows mapping of populations between the 2 census periods. What you see in blue is where the population is going down, and brown is where population is growing up. The section on the left is Kandy. So it's the same in most of our cities. People are getting priced out, people are moving to the burbs, and the cities are, gentrifying. And this is really the question for us that we need to ponder. What kind of future do we want? What kind of cities do we want? Do we want our cities to be poor-free zones? Or do we want our cities to be rich and diverse and cosmopolitan and places where we all live together? This is a social question to me, and how we need to deal with this. So I think a clear strategy on urban housing is required, and I think a lot of debate on this is required before we nail it down. But I think we need to rethink how we want to, rehouse our growing urban population. I think some form of densification is on the cards. It has to be done. The question is, how dense do you want to go? You need to start looking at housing not just as providing a box, but really, how do you use housing as part of an instrument, a larger instrument to uplift people's lives? It's kind of the first step in a much more holistic kind of look at improving people's lives. And also, when you look particularly at vulnerable populations, how do you deal with this question? It's easy, country after country has failed in saying, okay, we don't want to look at poor people, let's put them in kind of nice high-rises, neatly tuck them away, and let everybody else live happily ever after. And it doesn't quite work that way. and it effectively backfires, and you need to go revisit it again. So we need to, in my view, I think we need to think very, very sharply about integration of our society versus segregation of our society. And if you really think about it, this segregation that we are seeing, this socioeconomic segregation, is a relatively recent phenomenon. If you, and if you go to any of your ancestral villages, or even to the burbs of Colombo today, you will see wealthy people living amongst smaller enclaves of not so wealthy people. And it is this ecosystem that really is symbiotic. Those are the guys that work in your house, that drive your car, that fix your pipes. These are the guys we live among, and we need them. And I think the working class, the poor, are really the oil that makes cities run. And I don't think you can make a viable city by draining the oil out. I think you need to find a way to have them live with us and integrate them into this. And to do this, I think we need a synchronized approach across multiple government agencies to really put this agenda squarely on the table and deal with it head on. Obviously, we've got several current programs, which I'm sure you're all you've heard of in some capacity. There's the Urban Regeneration Program run by the UDA, which is this low-income housing program. We've got an accelerated program for middle-income housing, largely led by NHDA, which was just launched. That's targeting middle class, very much a market-driven program. And then you've got a whole bunch of housing development programs run by UDA, NHDA, USDA, NHDA, and a whole OVDC, and we'll hear about some of these. But basically, there's many models. And some of these models compete with other models. And there's a little bit of confusion in what is the best policy. There's a confusion in the market about how do we deal with it. And frankly, there's a confusion among agencies on exactly how do we crack this problem. So I think it's timely that we discuss it and resolve this confusion and make this judgment call on how we go forward. So let me just shed a little bit of light on this big program, the big elephant in the room, if you will, this URPCC project. It's a program where we have a lot of sunk cost. We've built 5,000 housing units already. There's 13,000 more under construction. They're about 450 to 550 square foot each. The basic idea is you liberate land that has low-income housing. You put them into dense housing. You liberate the land, sell it, and recover the cost. That's the basic business model. But we've run into a whole host of performance issues related to this, social issues as well. And we have an outstanding government commitment of roughly 40 billion rupees just on the current build-out. There's, of course, in my personal, and this is my personal view, this one-size-fits-all approach has failed in so many countries that we need to really think about, is this what we want to do? Lots of people cite the example of Singapore and say, look, Singapore did it, we can do it. I would again question that thesis. I was in Singapore 2 weeks ago and found out they spend $1.4 billion a year on public housing maintenance, and that's the state paying that. The question is, if we build this mass-scale housing, how do we maintain it? And I think the jury is still out on how we will actually do that in Sri Lanka. And then the cost is also prohibitive. The current estimates are it'll cost 180 billion rupees to rehouse the 68,000 or so, underserved settlements in the city. And the question is, do we need to do all of it? Recovery of cost obviously has been problematic, and we talked about institution capacity to deliver housing on such a mass scale is also a question. But the deeper problem here is this. By doing it, do we deepen social segregation? And do we really want to do that? That's really, to me, the critical question. So I feel you need a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift has to go in kind of 4 key areas: in planning, management, land, and finance. So let me just quickly go through this. I think when we think through this, I think, talking especially about the low income, we're talking about, 30% to 40% of the city's population. A one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work. It won't work. So we need to figure out optionalities. We need to densify, but we need to densify to sustainable levels. We need to think seriously about how do we mix socioeconomic groups and diffuse segregation rather than promote it. This concept of the rich people can't look at poor people, I don't buy it personally. And housing should be part of a more multifaceted way that, as far as possible, we do in a kind of community-driven way. We also need to rethink how the government really engaged. Does the government really need to be a provider, or are there situations where you can just be the enabler of this and let market mechanisms or community mechanisms actually go forward and do this in a way that we avoid these conflicting mandates between agencies, avoid these kind of land disputes over agencies, and get this thing done. We talked about land, not going to spend a lot of time, but basically we need to look at this from a macro perspective and say, how do we allocate land for housing, whether it's middle income, high income, and get basically all classes of people equity stake, basically, in the development of the city. And as another principle in terms of funding, I think we should look for maximum housing and maximum social impact for every rupee the government spends. I think the government should really intervene only in the situations where the market cannot take it, and prioritize where we go in. So in wrapping up, I think a deeper consensus on how we deal with housing is needed. And this is a consensus around the social side of housing. What kind of city do you and I want to live in? That's the question. And I think we need to really deliberate on that and think about that and come up with an answer that may not make everybody happy, but something that we have to deal with. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nayan. Lalit, let's get started immediately.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I wish to thank Lanka Business Online and Lakshman and also Nayana for inviting me to share my experiences over a long period of time in Africa and working in different countries in Africa and Asia. And today, I've titled, because we are going to talk, the subject is how do we build cohesive communities in our urban centers. Now, I titled my little presentation, How Do We Capitalize the People's Housing Process? After all, the people's housing process has been the biggest producer of housing anyway around the world. But then how do we bring it up to a different level? And also, I mean, last couple of days we have been talking about so many physical things. Now I want to bring people into these physical things in a way that cities are actually built by people and people live in cities. So, but we tend to sometimes forget them. So let me start. I deliberately avoided quoting numbers and issues around numbers because I wanted to present a case for where cohesive communities could be built around people of all income groups. Because we talk so much about inclusive cities, I'm trying to present an idea of how we build inclusive cities. So the problem I would define in a way that how do we realize the full potential of the people who are living in those so-called underserved settlements. Because right now, they have a big problem. They are under threat of eviction or removal or relocation, so they won't invest their money on their houses. And then there is no way to capitalize that. How do we capitalize the land assets that the people own to improve their living conditions and their social mobility and improve their economic status? Then looking at from the other side, then how do we optimize that use of that land for capital formation and economic growth? And of course, to increase the housing stock for all income groups, as we talked about inclusive cities. And how do we do it in a sustainable manner? And at the time when we have to create opportunities for the private sector to invest in the housing sector, what kind of climate incentives can we create for the private sector to be more involved in the housing sector? So, but to get to that, I'm putting forward three very, very fundamental basic policies. People who are in need should be placed at the center of decision-making and action. This is key. Otherwise, all these issues and conflicts and dissatisfaction and financial problems, all what we have been talking about will arise, and they're bound to arise anyway in programs that are top-down, governments deciding what to do for the people. So the people have to be at the center of decision-making and action. The state has to play its obligatory role of safeguarding rights, this is very important, and supporting people and the market to work. So the state has a very important role to play. They cannot say, okay, market, let the market do it, but the state has to play an important role to support this process. And the market, in turn, has to respond to this opportunity. So I called it a people-driven, a state-supported, a market finance approach that would work for our country. And we, as Sri Lankans, we have been very innovative in our social development programs over the last 50 years or so. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to come up with a very innovative program, a housing program, which addresses all the social issues, and can be done through the funding, the economy that we have. So that's the idea that I want to present to you. I mean, because the resources and commitments are there. Firstly, social capital. From the people's energy to improve their lives. Social capital, very often, we forget in all our economic and financial analysis, we never consider social capital. Social capital is fundamental in our societies, from our villages to our urban communities. Okay, thanks. And land, we got urban land, and we have financial institutions which are fairly flush with money. And political commitment. We have the political commitment to bestow rights, and then we have the institutional commitments like Megapolis, which has the objective of creating happiness. Okay, the support framework, I put it in a diagram like that. We have people, land, and money, and social mobilization that is required to build the social capital. This framework explains how the state has to support these three to work. And actions immediately required are that we have to building social capital through mobilization of people and sourcing financial capital through right kind of incentives, and optimizing the use of land for urban regeneration through very creative planning of how we can do that, both financial and physically, how we integrate physical and financial planning to achieve that optimization of the use of land. And lastly, I want to present to you something that we have been talking about because we talked about it a lot on technology. I think to have this consensus, as Nayana mentioned, on our next debate on this way forward to go on this issue where we have social and economic considerations to come up with this idea of the program, I think it is essential for us to create a kind of e-platform because we have the technology to do that. which we did not have in those days, to generate the ideas from everybody, so that the public, the communities who are out there living in these areas, developers, banks, civil society, professional bodies, and the state has to facilitate this whole debate to generate ideas for participation, consultation, and to ensure safeguards, so that you have a lively debate on the issues so that we reach that consensus. And then how do we respond to the different needs and different demands of because we have so many different interest groups in the whole picture. So this is a way of how we have a very transparent approach to policy making and coming up with programs which can be monitored over time. And we can have a very acceptable solution to the problem for the people and the financial sector. And that's how I think we can create the cohesive communities where all people of all income groups, irrespective of their incomes, that we can live together. We have been living together happily, and how do we take that living together to a better advanced step with better quality of life for everybody in the city. And I will stop there, and thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Lalit. Nihal?
Good afternoon, everybody. After Lalit talking about the housing for everybody, I am going to talk of housing in the port city. The port city, every square centimeter of port city is built by someone. It's not a land freely available. So because of that, there is a certain amount of cost for each centimeter of land in that one. So the dream of the creators of the port city is to make it a sustainable addition to the city of Colombo, generating business, tourism, and a place with high quality of life. Right, so those are the keywords that I am talking of, the addition to the city of Colombo with a place of high quality of life. Then one of the main features of the new city will be the high quality of public spaces. All the public spaces that are available are pre-planned, designed, nicely done, and with spaces of different characters for residential environments. So this creation, now if you look at the city, I mean, so you have already seen this because this is the port city, which is from north to south, it is 2 kilometers, east to west it is 2 kilometers. It's a very small entity, 500 acres of land. But within this, we have different islands, I mean, say areas for different characters. And also, in each of these areas, you will get plots for housing. If you look at the living island, the southern end is beaches. So you can have the quality of the beaches. If you look at the northern end, it ends up with a canal. Then, so is the Central Park. You have got housing around the Central Park, and the quality of space there will be to go with the Central Park. So likewise, there will be different I mean, say, quality of space available within this 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer space. So the housing also will have all those different types of characters. And the marina of the port city had been identified as one of the key areas of the city. And if you look at the section that I have given, with the marina, all the buildings that are around will be created to get the maximum view of the marina. So the quality of space that we are talking of, you can see in a couple of pictures. And when you are around the marina, all the facilities
the housing will be available with all the facilities that will go along with the marina. So marina space will have a special character of its own, and for housing also, that character will be utilized with all the services, facilities, everything which will be provided in the lower floors, like the ground levels of the marina. So all the amenities that are required for a good set of housing will be available in that one. So as I said, there are again another set of housing areas near the beach. So when you are near the beach, and if you are in one of those housing areas, once you come out of the house, the quality of space that you are going to get there is the quality of the beach, as you can see in the lower picture. And the other end of that housing area was the canal. So similarly, in that one, the space, the quality of space that is going to be created around that space is the canal. So the people living there and the visitors who come there will have all the facilities, amenities to go along the canal. I mean, they will not see the beach, they will not be on the sand, but they will have other facilities, other qualities. They can touch water, they can come onto the canal, they can row a boat in the canal. You have walkways on the canal edge, all that will be there. And also, if you look at the cross-section I have given above, you can see that the building heights also will be facilitated to get the maximum view of these spatial qualities. So this is canal, and then now these special features like the canal, the park, the other spaces also will have housing, and there the housing will be provided with terraced housing so that you can get the best view of all these facilities. So here we were talking of the quality of life within this space. So all those things that are required for the quality of life will be provided. And here we were talking of housing in multi-storied buildings and maybe very taller ones. But again, there's another sector. If you look at the left-hand top corner of the thing, we have villa compounds. Now in the villa compounds, there housing, if you want to have a housing plot there, you will have the villa compounds, and also that will have three different characteristics. If you look at the left-hand corner, you will be getting into the beach. If you look at the top corner, it will be to the lagoon, and below, you will be opening up into a green space, which is going to be the parkland space. So now these villa compounds, as you can see, if you are here, you will get the type of quality of space that we are talking of in there. And also, the main feature of the, one of the main features of the city is going to be the central park, which is more than 10 hectares in extent. It will be a properly laid out, properly landscaped parkland. And there again, all the buildings that are around that will be designed to get that view, the best quality of view. When you have the housing around this parkland, it will not just be living by the side of the park. The quality of space that they are talking of is to bring in the, to give the quality of life of living in the park. So to do that, they will have different types of housing models, different types of, the walk paths and other things that will connect all these spaces. And all these qualities of spaces I was talking of is located within an area of 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. So because of that, all these different qualities of spaces will be linked by walk paths, there will be cycle tracks. So anyone living in this area will be in a position to get to the other quality of space within a matter of 2 minutes. They can either walk, they can get to that space. So all the people, the housing that will be provided within the port city will be of different spatial qualities, different characteristics, and also all the amenities will be available for all the people who are coming here as well as to the visitors, because now like in the spaces like marina space, they will be expecting a lot of visitors to come and enjoy these spaces. So there will be all the facilities for housing people as well as for the visitors, and that is the type of housing that we are talking of within the port city. And also this housing the project company will be providing the land and the spaces with all these landscaping, but the housing plots will be made available for other investors to come and have their houses and make their investment. So for the investors also, they can look at all these different spatial qualities and select in which part they want to have the housing plot and also design accordingly. Yes, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Neha. Sandra, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe everyone is dreaming to have a house in the port city. Okay. It is my pleasure and honor to be in this great event. And I must thank Mr. Lakshman Bandaranayake, the director of Lanka Business Online, to give us this great opportunity to explain our model as a solution to the housing problem in Sri Lanka. I'm representing a government limited liability companies belongs to government, and we are in the trade of developing luxury houses for the people in the country over the last 25 years. And being a government institute, and we were thinking to go, rather than only looking for profit, we want to do some social service. So that's why we develop, and I'm not going to talk too much theory. And this is an explanation of our practical solution, what we made. And my theme is ensuring equitable access to housing through public-centered, market-based mechanism. So this is what you all know. Our government is catering for low-income families, and there is a market segment. In the private sector, they are catering for high income. That's all know. There is something. It's middle income and informal income. So if you take out government and the private sector, there's a part that middle income and informal income, the largest share of the urban housing needs that we didn't address, or even there is no proper mechanism to address this population, these families. So, yeah, think about Colombo, and we were thinking how we are going to sort out this matter being a government organization. And we realized there's obvious factors everyone knows. Hence, most of the state-owned lands in Colombo are encumbered. We are talking about the state-owned lands. And the other factor is the majority of encumbered lands are in prime locations. It's become prime over the period of time. The families lives in the lands have no title, but have land use value. We are using this word, land use value is very sensitive. Because of these people don't have title, but they are living there, they have gained some values to their lives and to society. So how we tackle with this land use value, and we're thinking like, okay, so we want to find a method and mechanism to develop their properties by giving the benefit for the people living there. The last question, yeah, we can make too many plans, explanation, but the finance. So this is the question, this is the problem arising, and this is the problem finally take into consideration. So, like here, so when we talk about this, we have different organization who is doing the housing, UDA and HDA, and I can't remember the names, number of organization. But in our plan, we say there should be one organization who is doing a master plan authority. I hope it can be our megapolis. It should be there, some organization who master all the policies and regulations, everything in country. Under the master plan authority, there should be a housing development policy, which we don't have at the moment. Under the housing development authority policy, there should be a coordinating office. You can rename it any name. In Singapore, it says CDB, Central HDB, Housing Development Board. So in Sri Lanka, we can make use of any name. The one entity dedicated for housing. And then housing coordinating office must coordinate the land owners, I mean government. There are too many organizations who hold the state-owned lands. The UDA, NHDA, CMC, whatever they are, even railway, all people have the land, state-owned lands under their custody. So the coordinating office must coordinate with the landowners, and they must coordinate with investors who are willing to invest in the housing sector. After that, they must plan the building and the construct. They must award the contracts, and they must make sure, this is the most important part, they must make sure they are building houses for low-income groups, and then middle-income groups, and even for high-income and mixed development. Why we forget about it? They are our citizens, not because of they are rich, but the coordinating office must make sure they are making houses. It's because that is the way that we can earn profit. From that, obviously we have finance institution in Sri Lanka. So we ask the coordinating office must coordinate with finance institutions, because in bank it's very difficult to get a loan for a middle income, even middle income. Obviously for high income is no problem. They are even not going to the bank. They all have money. But for financing, so middle income, definitely coordinating office must coordinate and get financing. And even for high income. And by that way, middle income and high income can pay back, buy the housing. And I just forgot about the collecting income from the low income groups. There should be something, but there should be I talk about the poor people who can't afford housing. And then investor will get profit share. This is the outline. Final landowners will remain in the land ownership. I don't know how the land authority should decide how it is coming. But in Singapore, in other countries, the land they are giving on lease basis. That means after 99 years, it's going back to the state. This is the model that we are trying to establish in Sri Lanka, but this is actually has to be in a mass scale. But as a small organization, we were trying to implement it. I have small, we are doing this in the ground. And there's one case study that we were doing at the moment. With this concept, we going around the country, and one thing like this case study actually is we did this one in Nuvareliya. Yeah, this our team took one day to do 15 minutes video, and I'm just spent two days to condense it to 3 minutes. So you'll see I'm not a nice editor. But it's okay. I'll try to convey my message. It's okay, leave it. This is a joint venture project, NHDA, UDA, and Nuvareli Municipal Council and ourselves, our company. I see this Nuvareli city. I know most of you have been in Nuvareli at least once. See, this is a nice, and you see it's very beautiful. And we all talk about how nice is Nuvareli. You see its beauty, yeah. Around there's too many places to enjoy for rich like you. And you see, when we go and see, yeah, it's a nice place. But when you go into deeper, have you ever seen this picture, what you are seeing here? There are too many poor people around. There's no livability is nowhere. That can't live. They don't have space. Children, they don't have place to play. Yeah, there's golf court, not poor people. I mean, see the real world. This is the world that we are talking. And not everything, the finance, these people. Nuvareli, you think there are too many state lands and too many lot of lands. See the market is not developed, it's underdeveloped. So all this together, okay, this because of all poverty, and we want to break this. To break, we need provide housing. Housing will be the initiative to enhance the people's life. And we think, okay, so to provide house, then is the problem with the finance. So is the government is going to back the finance? Unfortunately, at the moment, yeah, there are some, but not for all. So after discussion we had with Municipal Council Nuvareli, the politicians, they came and say, okay, we want to develop it, and they are also nice people, not we as think. And they say, okay, in the city, we have prime lands. Why don't you take those? At the moment, the Andrew place, at the moment there's occupied by the unauthorized business community. And three state, the one is Kargil Swat, another one is all municipal council land and the polar. So all these lands belongs to municipal council. So we had several meetings, and this is the map, land map. With the community and decide, it will be our final design, and this is a long the video, but I just condensed, that's what we are going to give. So what basically we are planning, this project will be implemented as a PPP, private-public partnership. I invite our investors who are willing to invest, come and join with us. As being with our government, we represent the government. So this is like, we don't want to go and give the burden to the government to find the finance. So these are the project outcomes. It's like, we are going to develop 198 shopping spaces. At the moment, there are unauthorized business community. We don't want to take them away. They should be in the same place. That's our prime concern. So we are going to give these people the same place after develop nice shopping. And there will be a number of upper class houses. This is the main source of finance that we are going to collect the money that I was talking about, the upper income housing, 390. And then we are going to develop 1,000 number of underserved family houses. I'm just begging my finance expert not to calculate 1,000 into 4 million or something. This is actually subsidized, and as Mr. Lankataleka clearly said, we are capitalizing these social, social assets. So altogether, number of parking, and the last one, will this project viable for investors? Yeah, this is my calculation. They don't go and calculate it again. Our forecast revenue, it will be 13 billion rupees, and forecasted project cost is 10 billion. So we can just deduct, and 2 billion as ROI, 22%. Mind this one, actually investment profit, not the contractor, the expected total contract. So that's all, and I think, thank you for listening this presentation.
Thank you, Sandra. Let's vision what this means. The panel is titled Housing for Cohesive Urban Communities. What does this really mean? What do these words really mean to us? Do we know a cohesive community or a cohesive city when we see it? Can you measure it? I don't know how. I knew I lived in 1983 in a city that was not cohesive because it blew up. But there has to be a better way to measure cohesiveness. What are the indicators for this? Nayana, let's start with you, and Lalit after that.
I think cohesiveness basically means, there's diversity and there's coexistence within this diversity. And I mean diversity in every sense of the word, whether it's ethnic, whether it's national, whether it's income group, whether it's men or women. I think basically, to me, again, this is my personal view, to me a cohesive society is where all kinds of people can coexist. And that's the kind of city I would like to live in, where you have, the nice restaurants, you have the Ministry of Crab, and then you have the Koto joint down the street. You have this mix, this hodgepodge, the chaos of PETA, a beautiful waterfront. All of this ensemble, I think, is what makes a nice city.
Okay, so diversity and coexistence as a necessary condition. Lalit?
Thank you. I think also, just to add to what Nayana said, is the kind of the mutual support system that people build by coexisting and living together. Even if you take, you brought up the point about 1983, and if you look in the case of 1983, you said the city blew up. Yes, it blew up. But if you looked at the low-income communities, the communities that we were talking about as underserved, nothing happened. And people were protected in those areas. So that is the level of coexistence that we need to recreate in our city on a wider scale. So that's the thing, that's the kind of ideal city that we should be aiming at, of creating, by bringing everybody together so that there's mutual support for each other, there's no security issues. If you create gated cities which require walls, guards, dogs, and all the security systems, if you create segregated cities. So the integrated, cohesive city would bring people together, that they will take care of each other in a broader sense.
Shankar, have you looked at this in your study, what cohesiveness means?
So cohesiveness or inclusiveness, it's about looking all spectrum of people living together, not at a city level, and also at the micro market level, in the sense in the district level, and also at the community or the society level. So they need to live together, work together, and play together in all the three phases. One at the project level, one at the area level, and at the city level. So if you can create communities, if you can create infrastructure, if you can create housing to tie these three things together, that is work, play, and of course live, that is cohesiveness, according to me.
So you're really touching on where we focus. That unit of analysis is important. We could talk about the country, Nayana is talking about a city. You're even drawing it maybe even smaller. You could think about cohesiveness within a very small development and a building, right? How important is that? So, Nihal and the port city is unapologetic about the fact that it is for high net worth individuals to own a second home where they might come and work and play. And that's a quote from yesterday, right? And if Nayana is going to give us great transport, let's say as, instead of 1.5 hours from Malabar, it's going to come down to 22 minutes. Why can't the poor people who clean the toilets and issue government ID cards, the middle income people, all of these people live there and commute? 22 minutes is, in this example, not too bad to get a plumber in, right? What's wrong with that model? Nihal, maybe you can take that. Maybe you like that model, and that's okay, because the panel is actually full of very nice people who want everybody to live together. Yeah?
Now the spaces, the cohesiveness, the different types of people living together, I mean, is talked of in cities which we have evolved over time, right? There had been, say, cities built, different types of characters. Say, then people have come and lived in places where not planned for housing. So because they are there, then we have worked out systems for them to live, coexist, providing each other, helping each other. That's the thing. But in the megapolis, what Nayana and them they are talking of is the megapolis is a series of cities where each of these cities will assist the other one. I mean, when you talk of the technology city, you cannot expect everything to be provided within this technological city. And there is this industrial city where 100% of all the requirements cannot be provided within this technological city. And also, if you look at the series of cities that they have planned, there is also a residential city. There's also a forestry city in that. So all of them together will be the city, the megapolis, the main plan. So similarly, the port city is a place that we are planning now. Each centimeter of land, as I said, has a cost because it is not available and it will be built. So in a situation like that, I don't think we can start it on the day one by bringing in all the types of people into the system and allow them to occupy houses and all that. But also, if you look at me, I live not in the city center. I cannot afford it. I live in a suburb, and my bosses have said my office is in the city center. You come to work at 8:30. So there are different modes of transport. But now I spend about more than 1 hour coming there. Yeah, if there's a system where it is 22 minutes from Marami, I don't mind living there because you can get to the space. If the quality of travel is that much, people will not live, hesitate to live in those places. Now, before the Southern Expressway was built, going to Gaul and doing something there and coming back was a full day's event. Now, immediately after the Southern Expressway was opened, I mean, there were people going for dinner in the, to a hotel in the southern end and coming back to Colombo for sleeping. I mean, that is the type of thing that you can do with improving the quality of travel and the intensity of travel. So with that, I think the living spaces also can be, say categorized, and all of them together, like in the megapolis, will form into this one system.
So Nayana and Jeremy, let me bring you in, which is, he's essentially having a vision of, the rich can live in the pockets, other people can live in the pockets, as long as these nodes that connect them. Roads are one, maybe other pipes that run and connect our data networks is one. Rich people, you may not even need to travel into the city. Now the rich could maybe actually live in the suburbs, right? How does that fit with your vision of this city?
So I think it boils down to a question of choice. If somebody chooses to move to Malabé because maybe it's a nicer environment and take that 22-minute commute into the town, fine. It's a different proposition to say you must go. My aspiration, at least, is to say, look, let's give people the choice, give people a whole menu of choices of where they want to live that are all nice places, but let them have a choice. Now, the port city obviously is a commercial development. They're pumping in $1.4 billion. They've got a very specific business plan, a very specific target market. So to me, Port City is just one piece of a much broader kind of downtown Colombo fabric. There's a question, why wouldn't you force Port City to build low-income and middle-income housing? I think it just doesn't make commercial sense. It doesn't necessarily need to happen, as long as the open spaces, the beaches, the waterways are accessible to the rest of the public. Then I think it's really a non-issue. As long as we can create enough of a vibrant ecosystem just across the road in the rest of Colombo City, where we've got 226 acres of state land, for example.
Jeremy, the role of technology in this, can that help make those connectivity things? I mean, the answer seems to be yes. Then can we imagine a different kind of city, really, from this co-locatedness that we are talking about?
I think if you take, just to go back 1 second, I mean, the role of technology, if you're going to build technology into anything, the same way as there has to be a plan as to what type of housing you want to build, there has to be a plan as to what technology you want to build. Now, if you look at what's happening very rapidly in the country at the moment, is people are adopting technology even faster than they did when the GSM networks first launched. You have ICTA and Mohantan and the government pushing heavily for a fully digitalized society. Now, if you're going to end in a situation, or end point is where you want a digitalized society, if we talk specifically about housing, then you have to build into the housing like the same way as you build foundations, you have to build the connectivity as a foundation for all of those properties so people can then use whichever device they want and have access to. Now, if you talk about how inclusive that can become, well, I mean, that's happening even today. I mean, even today at a broader level, you have companies here processing documents for companies in Europe. I mean, so Malabé is pretty close when you compare those types of things. So that's basically not an issue. The issue that I see more, and we have some experience of, is when a decision is made, say, to move a community, the solution that is provided in terms of the housing doesn't necessarily include many of the things that those people would require to make that a nice place to live. So, for example, I can think of examples where there is no, they've built 455 square meter apartments, but within those apartments, there isn't the infrastructure to deliver connectivity to each apartment. And as a consequence of that, it makes it not such a nice place to live. So technology can deliver to those things if it's thought about at the beginning. It can deliver high levels of security. It can improve the maintenance of everything. For example, it's very simple now to know when a light bulb's not working if you have the right solutions in place, and then someone can go and change the light bulb. You don't have to have people walking around saying that the public space is now dark, etc., etc. All of those things can be there, but it can't happen unless everyone decides and sits at the beginning and says this is the minimum quality or the minimum connectivity that's required, even at the lowest end. It doesn't matter. The high end takes care of itself, and I think some of those discussions that go on around land use and high end, they take care of themselves. But what you have to ensure, I think, is that for the middle income earners and for the low end earners, you have to deliver what's required for them to actually uplift themselves. And I think philosophically, the mobile phone industry has done that globally. I mean, that's the one thing. When I first came here 20 years ago, you couldn't get a landline, let alone a mobile phone. Now, everybody has a mobile phone. In fact, now increasingly everybody has a smartphone, not just a mobile phone. So I think it's a planning issue, but it's not a difficult issue because Sri Lanka is very lucky and it's very advanced from a connectivity point of view. It's far more advanced than anywhere else in this region.
So the technology can mediate space in a way that it makes space somewhat irrelevant to some extent, right? It bridges time and space, but space specifically in this conversation. And space matters to people. Location is important, where they live, even if it's on encroached land, something they legally own. What are the thoughts of taking people and moving them versus just developing where they are, and the opportunity cost, both social and economic involved in that? Because one could argue the Colombo, let's say, squatters, if you want to call them, are on prime land, right? Or in Nuwara you have identified key areas, prime government land that can be put to good use. Or you could just develop it for the low-end community, or try and mix them. You could move the low-end community out. This could create concentrations of different income. Or you could go the other way and have very mixed income housing. What are the pros and the cons? Shankar, if you could start, and I'll come back on the market mechanisms for these. But Shankar and Naina?
Yeah. As far as redevelopment is concerned, I think this is the only model available. I mean, you have to, land is the resource.
What do you mean by this? Which one? Relocation?
Land is the resource, not relocation.
Yeah.
Land is the resource. So you have to utilize the land where they live. And you have to bring in a private developer who can develop for them and utilize the excess land, because most of these people live at a level, in the sense they don't utilize the land to the fullest extent. So since it is going to be a really prime property, it is very important to utilize that land, in the sense, make a commercial development, and the extra land could be developed for the residences of these people. So that way, it makes commercial viability of the project in a good sense, and there will be participation from the developers. Otherwise, if there is no commercial sense or viability in a project, the private developer will not come and participate. So to woo the private developers to come and participate in this, you need to have these kind of models. Otherwise, it will not be a successful model. Even in India, we tried a lot of PPP projects, and wherever there is a prime property involved and wherever the commercial viability is there, there are takers. And wherever the land parcel is a little away from the city or something like that, and there are no takers. So it is very important for a private developer to look at these opportunities, encash on the land value, and also in turn provide housing to the poor where they live.
But isn't the viability for the commercial developer increased even further if you move the poor people out and give them housing somewhere else?
But how to move them out? Because you need to provide alternate housing. So temporarily during the construction phase, anyway you have to provide housing for them temporarily. But if you have an alternate solution, already available solution, then it's fine. But you don't have, most of the cities don't have that. You don't have an alternate solutions permanently to relocate them. Even if you identify a location away from the city, what about connectivity? Because which one comes first is the matter. whether the development, the existing development come first, or the infrastructure or the connectivity to the new area which has been identified for them to relocate. So if the connectivity is not established, if you throw them out of the city, again, they are going to come back. This we have seen elsewhere. Mumbai is the best example. If you throw them out, again, they are going to come back in another 5 years' time. So how are we going to tackle this issue is very, very important.
Lalit, you talked, this is very related to this. You are talking about, I think your quote was people-driven, state-supported, market-financed, right? What does people-driven really mean? You talked about putting people at the center. What does that really mean?
Thank you very much. I mean, I can quote examples. Can I go back a little bit? For example, we talked about, what would be the most kind of financially feasible option in the case of Colombo. I mean, there are 1,053 settlements as called underserved. Out of that, something like 400 are fairly consolidated. They have built their houses to 2-3 stories, which really don't require any relocation or any redevelopment. All you need is to give them better access to credit, and they will improve further. I mean, there are settlements like that. But there are some settlements that are on prime land, which people can optimize their use by redevelopment. So those are, you cannot put all the settlements into one category. So there are settlements that have to go through a process of redevelopment. Some can be consolidated, and then there are settlements that are in very vulnerable places, like railway reservations, canal banks, and various other situations where relocation is the only option. But the relocation also has to be done through the whole process of people taking decisions and exercising their choices as to how do we relocate. Do we take the compensation and go out somewhere to a rural area and build a house, or we want to live in the city? And those choices should be open to people. That is the most important thing, that because if you create a process where people are allowed to take those decisions regarding how they house themselves, how do they finance themselves. By the way, another point is that in the city of Colombo, we should not be calling them urban poor anymore, because they are not poor anymore. Only out of this municipality survey, they found only 6 settlements which they call extremely poor. The rest are fairly well off.
But let me push back. You're saying we should give people the choice. Some say, you know what, people actually don't know what's good for them, right? A slightly paternalistic view, and there's people talking about we can use, paternalistic choice options to nudge people to make the right choice. Because people don't like to move, for example. And we have seen this repeatedly, right? And the fact that people don't like to move is shown because the local member gets de-elected in the next election in Sri Lanka when we try to move people from even one location to another, leave from one city to another, right? So one could argue this is not very palatable. Where has it actually worked? What does this process actually look like? What do? You go and tell them, here are the financial incentives, here's the negative side of it. Is it about education? What is it about?
Yes, there are many factors. Of course, over the years, they have built up their whole survival networks and that social capital that I was talking about. Incidentally, I mean, you all know that the whole is greater than the sum of parts. I mean, to demonstrate, to symbolize, I brought this glass, which is made of small pieces of broken glass into a hole, which can actually contain some water for me to drink. So this is what I mean, symbolized by social capital, that people have come together and built that social capital, which we, as professionals and bureaucrats, we fail to recognize that there's a whole lot going on out there within the communities than we know. So the thing about the choice, and I disagree with you, pardon me, that we should not assume that people don't know. People are very, very intelligent. They know what they know exactly what is going on. They know the tricks of the politicians. They know everything. And they will use the best option for them if the choices are given to them. So that is the kind of the building that they have created by living together all these years, the social capital, which we have to mobilize that to create a better living conditions for them.
Senarath, Naina and Shivankar, let me bring you in here, which is, where do these conversations take place? Have we been through a process like this? For example, in your Norelia example, what was the consultation process that we had with the people? Was there a voice? Is there some mechanism? Because there were people encroaching on this land, right? What was the process? And Naina, at a more broader level about the Western Megapolis region project. Is that conversation taking place? Is that a gap? And Shivankar, you are going into, for example, in the Kotte area, into some areas where some traditionally poor housing was there. And you, as a private investor, went in and acquired the land, but you still had a certain type of very extremes, you know, the millionaires row and then very small houses of people who had lived there. How do you now, as an investor, bridge that gap so those people don't come and, you know, start creating trouble, for example? Maybe we can start with Senrath.
Yeah, this very important question. How do we interact with the community? Actually, we had more, I think the 4 times we met the community. We discussed with them. They are not only the family, houses. The impact is going to the commercial community. There are shop owners. So the problem was there for last 2 decades. They were fighting with the municipality. They were fighting with the all the local authorities to stay in the place because it not belongs to them. So after all, we have several discussions, and we met the leaders of the community, and I say we understand their language first, and we cater for their requirement first. Then we go to the authorities, like a municipal council, and say, see, these people are looking for this one, and we want to cater for them first. Then only we can fulfill your need. After we discuss all these things, then it came to the planning. And once we finalized the plan, only we came to the financing. So once we took all this together, everyone is happy. Like council wanted to do it, and investors wanted to do it, and people wanted to do it. Unfortunately, our planning authorities just dragging it. But it's obvious fact. Now, I mean, any development, and we should not think in our office that all we know. As Mr. Lankatilaka clearly said, he's one of. Now we have to talk to the people first and see what their expectation. Say you are building as far as if it is not matching the people's expectation, it's not going to be viable. That's what happening in Colombo. Even we plan one development Colombo city. The people are willing to come with our program. But I see that some people who are on the top level in our country say, no, that's not the way, this is the way. But the people don't like it. So what's the point? We are making development huge. You build a huge, nice city, but people don't like. So no point. So our approach, we first thing, we go and talk to the people. It can be a business community. It can be families living there. It can be community leaders. It can be even politicians. Politicians, they have a lot of interest on these developments. So we have to talk everyone and get their consent and develop our plan according to the requirement. Otherwise, it's not going to be viable. Then only we can think about finance. Finance also is the main concern. Everything together will be the impact. Otherwise, the later, if you don't concern all these matters, you will see that too many issues are coming which the cost too high. Mm-hmm. It will double your cost to solve that problem. Maybe you are making endless problem, like we have already seen some apartment that maintenance issues is coming. So first we have to forecast and see this will be the problem. To understand the problem, we have to talk to the community first.
Okay. Nayana?
Look, I think there's actually a very interesting case in this in Srillev Island. UDA has two projects across the street from each other. One is Destiny, and the other is the Tata development. And they both involved getting a developer in to extract commercial value and then providing rehousing to the settlement instead of a cash outlay for the land. And the way we managed the social engagement in the two was very different. It's two officers in the same institution. One was a phenomenal success. There was no real social issues. The people are quite happy. The development is progressing very well. The other one was very badly handled. Kids were screaming. We demolished bulldozed houses. We still see the footage of that over and over again. The project was delayed by a year and a half. So I think we have this experience.
So what was the difference? What made
the difference is how hands-on we were with working with the communities, mobilizing the communities, understanding what specifically they want, bridging the kind of gap between the communities and the developer, effectively the government taking the role of advocate for the community and saying, look, they need this, they need that, not the other way around saying, look, you guys are an inconvenience, please get out of the way. So I think it's the attitude you take and the way you engage with this community can fundamentally change the economics of the project. Because if you can get going faster and you can build it faster, you're obviously going to get better return on your capital.
Other than the process, were the incentives offered to the residents
They're roughly the same,
different?
yeah.
Okay, so that's in a way a
Yeah,
nice
I mean,
natural
it's literally
experiment. Yeah.
across the street from
Yeah.
each other, and the night and day.
So you would think the aspirations are similar, the people are similar, but
Yeah.
you had different
Yeah.
outcomes.
But I mean, the question of, look, have we done this for the broader megapolis? The answer is not yet. I mean, I think the point we're at now is we're trying to reach consensus internally within government saying, what's the best way to do this? I mean, we have a school of thought that says, let's put them in 20-story boxes. Some say 30-story boxes, some say 4 stories, some say let them be. So we still don't have consensus on that. And I think that's part of the process. We need to debate it. We need to kind of, fight it out. And hopefully in the next couple of months, we will actually have a cohesive strategy and a policy framework, which we can then go out and work with the people to execute.
Okay.
So.
Shwant.
Yeah, well, first let me talk about what we did through Fairway Holdings when we started building in the Rajagiri area. We, of course, understand that the community integration is very important, but there is one small difference in what we did. What we did was we created community centers, we repaired their houses, we gave new roofs to all the houses around there, we provide education facilities, books and everything else for all the children who live in the area. We have Montessori going on in the community center. We have English classes. So we engage with the community in many ways. But there is one fundamental difference. The people whom we engage with like this, I don't think we can classify them as squatters at all. So I think the problem we have with the megapolis, I think there are two segments that we have to look at. One is, of course, the squatters that we have in the Colombo region, right? And what we do with them. Second thing is that with the development of Port City, yesterday I remember it was mentioned saying that there'll be 83,000 jobs created by the development of the Port City. Very good. But what does the Port City management expect these people to do? Come from where? To work in the Port City, go back where? I actually believe, I like to actually throw a stone among the pigeons and say, we really don't want squatters and really low-income people living around us. That's a fact, right? We can, in society, to be righteous, we can say all kinds of other things, but we don't. Land values, if there is a squatter community close by, is lower. That's already a part and parcel of our culture currently. So let's all say, no, we don't like it. So I believe that the government, the developers, and the consumers of this luxury housing have a collective responsibility to provide for the squatters and for the workforce that we want around us. The problem with this workforce is we don't want them in our face, But we also
them.
want them
Yeah.
close at hand to come and, attend to all our needs and work that needs to be done. So I think that is why I say it is the responsibility of the government, the developer, and the consumers of these projects. And like it was just mentioned, yes, there are 2 projects. Destiny is one of them. That this has already been done. That means the cost of having to build a apartment complex to house the people who are displaced, who are mostly squatters, I believe, who didn't have legal documentation for the land, was done. And that was part of the agreement in giving the land for that developer. So it is already been done. But with one difference, they've also actually gone and built the high-rise building which will house these squatters and the low-income group people right next to this luxury building that is coming up next. In my opinion, that actually doesn't work. I also believe that they are as uncomfortable. Low-income group people would be also as uncomfortable living next to a rich neighborhood as a rich neighborhood would be of a low-income group. I believe, first of all, like you said, if you have discussions with them, if you try and find out, we are all marketing people. We try to get consumers to buy things they don't want. Why can't we find out what these guys actually want? What will make them move? Now, if we are talking about, right, lifestyle improvement for everybody else, if there is a lifestyle improvement for these people, wouldn't they willingly move? Would they move if they have education, if there's a school? Would they move if they have a hospital? Right? Now, in the megapolis development, we also obviously have the CDB. And then we have the downtown. And also, I believe that we have these satellite townships. Right? So maybe I would say the developers of the port city and the megapolis, right, along with the government facilitating it all, and also maybe some of the cost being borne by whoever who's going to enjoy these luxury spaces, should then develop some cohesive living standards and also improve the living standards of these people. If you can show that it can be improved, and also maybe, like we said, okay, why would they go there? Maybe you have some employment opportunities in that area. Maybe the housewife who was at home can now do a small, job on the side. Maybe use technology for that. You talk about schooling in this country. I lived in the South Pacific, which is geographically fragmented. And in schools, they use satellite technology. There is one teacher, and there are about 25 schools to which this person teaches. Just from a Skype call, we can do that. So I think we should look a little beyond that, and we should understand what these low-income groups need. Because one thing is, we need them as much as they need us, right? So I think we need to find an inclusive solution looking at all these different aspects.
So, Nayana, he's going back to that original debate we had, yeah? Which is, we want them to work, but both parties may be slightly uncomfortable. There's also a question of what kind of housing we give to certain types of people and what that entails in terms of security and policing and all, because there's evidence emerging that, high concentration of poor people in high-rises may not be bad and so on and so forth. How do you respond to this?
Yeah, look, I agree with one piece of it, is that they need us as much as we need them. The rest of it, we can agree to disagree. So here's the thing. I think basically there is no one box where you are poor and one box where you're rich. Wealth is a continuum. Wealth is a continuum. And I think cities should be systems where you are able to move from one end upward to the next. I think if we build a system where, if I'm a rich kid and I can look out the window and I don't see anybody else, I think that's a dysfunctional way to grow up. And I think in 20, 30 years, we'll have a dysfunctional leadership. Look, I have 3 kids. I had 2 kids and I was raising them in Manila. I was working for ADB, living in an expat bubble. Right? You live in the expat housing, you earn an expat salary, you hang out with your expats, go to the nice restaurants, and you don't interact with Manila. And I found that personally repulsive after a while. And that was one of the reasons I actually moved back to Sri Lanka. And now I see my own kids and they hang out with the kids in our community of all kinds of races. They crack vulgar jokes with all kinds of people. They've learned to interact with different sets of people. I think it just makes them better people. So it just goes back to this question of, I think it's convenient in the short term to say they, and box a certain group of people and say, they should not be here, why don't we get rid of them in some fashion? I think that's certainly an opinion, but I don't think that's a viable option for a country that is so diverse, that has a history of social mobility, that has high education levels, that is just waiting to jump. I'll give you a case in point. My current driver, he lives in a low-income settlement in Kullanau. His daughter did her first shy in A-levels, and she got 2 A's and 1 B. And she said, this is not good enough. I'm going to do it again. And she's shooting for 3 A's. She's almost positive she will go to medical school. I would bet, she's a really bright girl. I would bet in 10 years, she might be buying one of your apartments. Because she's a brilliant girl. But that's because this guy lives in a low-income settlement in Colombo, and he has access to what Colombo is. And she looks at these people around her and says, you know what, I want to grow out of this community. I want to be one of them. But that's the society.
Aspirations
that's
and
the
social
aspiration.
mobility.
By
Sorry, I
getting
want
rid
to
of
just
them,
add
you
one
don't-
point to
Yeah,
this.
quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. Just 2 things. One is that I don't suggest that we box them and put them away. What I suggest is that we also provide some mechanism to elevate their lifestyle, right? Maybe in the periphery, number 2. Second one is to interact with what you would call rich and poor. I don't think you need to live next to each other. Right? There are enough of ways that you can also interact. Just want to add those 2 points.
Right, I'm going to come back to you, which is, in a way, what you're saying is there's so much money to be made at the high-end luxury market. You can afford to be quite generous with the poor people. You can fix, or the middle income, whatever, all these other people who are not in millionaires' row. You can fix their houses, rebuild their roofs, you can build schools, you can do cool stuff for them, right? Are you, in fact, so that's a completely different vision, right? What is it going to take, if you guys ever agree, the 2 of you, that's a philosophical difference, but financially, can you as an investor enter that middle income and low income market? When does that become attractive to you? Because clearly there's money to be made at the high end. Why is it not attractive to you? If, for example, you had the same social vision as Nayana, you don't have to, this is just a question about economics now.
Yes, I think it is matter of time, and people have to move into it. Obviously, when companies spend their time and effort, the management time and effort, they would look at the best option of achieving their objectives. But even companies who've started in super luxury apartment complexes are now moving down towards the lower levels, and so it's happening the other way around as well. I think if private companies are to be encouraged to be part of this, there has to be a facilitation from the government. Because if you would have to take the actual cost of land and develop, then I don't know whether we can actually provide those housing at the prices that they require. Then also one other thing is that we are actually far behind construction building technology. Our construction costs in this country are far excessive than other countries. I'm sure my colleague from JLL can confirm this. So there has to be some impetus from the government that will allow, for private companies to step into this arena and do that. And if they are tied up, like the Destiny transaction was done, I think that would be the best way to do that.
Yeah, I then have a question for Sandra.
Just very quickly, on the point of are people investing in lower income projects? I mean, one of the things that we see is that there are the very big mega projects which are all very high line, but every Monday morning I receive a list of new projects which are starting, and the number of if you like, apartment blocks which have between 8 and 20 apartments which are being constructed on relatively small pieces of land across the city is incredible. I mean, there's one street which has 5 or 6 of them which have just started in the last month. So, I mean, it's not just the big projects. There's a lot of development which is going on, which is outside
I think
of
there's
that.
a move somewhat to the middle. I would challenge you to show me that there's an actual market move to the lower end. I want to ask Sarah this exactly, because who is investing? Are these people who have a social motive? Because we know that, you know, when market rates can be had, there are people who still get into markets with social objectives and are willing to take a lower rate of return. Who are the types of people who want to...
The model I was explaining, we don't expect investor come and do their social works. The same thing is happening in the private sector also. If someone has a land, he can invest to a project. Say, for instance, my land value is this much. From the project, I expect this much of profit share. So the same thing is applying here. So what we plan as a government authority, the land we are allocating to the investor that the investor can't buy. It's expensive, and if investor invests on that land, he has to spend a lot of money. So that he can come and do the construction on our land. So the land is free of charge for them. And meantime, we expect fair amount of return for the value of the land. Land value plus the profit share. That we are going to use to subsidize the people already there, and if you talk about the shops and all, so there will be subsidized price for the poor people.
Yeah.
Not free. I mean, no, there will be subsidized. And the investor, he is doing his business. He is selling it to the upper sale market. We should not mix up. We don't ask to locate the poor person in next to the apartment of the this rich person. I mean, it's a budget. It's a program that we will identify 3 lands. It's not disturbing each other's livelihood. So we'll take as a one package. Like you saw that there are 4 lands. So there's a one package. So we segregate. We know each other's expectation.
Yeah. So it's about this structure. I want you guys, you can respond, but address land as one of the key bottlenecks and how do we free it up. And he's come up with it's not giving it away for free, it's giving it to the person who asked for the lowest return on that particular block of land. Construction costs. What are the other ways of releasing up land in order to make it attractive for investors to enter almost the social housing entry level, not even middle income, I'm saying.
Yeah, if you look at the private developers, developers look at an opportunity with 3 costs. One is the land cost, second is the construction cost, and the third is the profit margins. First is the land cost. Land cost is so high, that is why you are looking at all the developers looking at the high-end luxury residential. Is there a way where the land cost can come down? Government should subsidize the land cost so that there will be takers for these kind of land parcels. The developer will come in and take this land at a subsidized rate and bring down the construction cost drastically by bringing in technology. Because nowadays, a lot of prefab technologies are coming in that can really pull down the construction cost about 20 to 30%. So that is again bringing down the cost drastically. And the third component is the margins. So no developer will work on a less margin. I mean, margins are going to stay there. Even if they bring down by 5%, they would look at more volume. So government should give an opportunity for them to increase the volume of construction so that they can bring down the cost. So basically, we need to bring down land cost, bring down construction cost, and look at a volume where the margins are at par with their expectations.
Naina? Land, releasing, models.
Yeah, so I think Shankar's right. I think on the land, there are things that we need to do in terms of releasing land. And we actually have this accelerated program of middle income housing, which is releasing subsidized land for developers who can develop 80% of the housing stock on a particular site under a 5 million price point. You'll see ads and billboards around now. It's a completely market-driven process. So that is ongoing. But I just wanted to point out one other issue. We should get away from this notion that just because people live in informal or somewhat underserved settlements now, that they really can't afford housing. I don't think there's any discussion here, or there should be a discussion of saying, look, it should be free. But there should be a very detailed discussion on how do you provide housing finance. As Shankar mentioned at the beginning, you know, our mortgage penetration is 6% of GDP. It's pathetic. You basically have to prove that you don't need money to get a house. So we're actually looking at that. How can we, you know, really free up housing finance? And how do you get these communities of middle income and low income access to housing finance so they can actually finance their way into higher quality housing? You know, and that's, in a way, the interesting thing about Singapore. The Singapore public housing is $250,000 a pop. It's not cheap housing.
Yep.
It's just they have a very interesting housing finance system. So that is something we are sharply looking at and working with the banks on to try to get them long-term capital, because they basically take short-term fixed deposit money and they don't want to get give out long tenor loans. So we need to get longer-term affordable capital to banks so they can on-lend for mortgages and so on. So I think the housing finance sector is really where we need a lot of action.
And there's a significant role for the government to play in terms of reinsurance and just facilitating that market,
yeah,
right?
I think there's a lot of role for the government, and there's also a lot of role for the private sector to say, look, how do you create product that makes sense? I'll take your PCC housing, for example.
Yep.
We spent $3.5 million on one of those housing units. We collect $1 million in principal over 30 years with no interest. So we're basically actually collecting a present value of $300. And of that, people are paying like 20%, right? But if you think of it the other way, here's an asset that has a value, a minimal value of $3.5 million, and you've basically been given away at 350,000 rupees. So the question is anybody willing to finance a 350,000 rupees and get a 3.5 million asset? Even if you have 20 or 30 or 40% default, you're still probably going to be up. So, so I think we need to look at the finance space in a much more concerted way.
One last question, and I'll let each of you have the final word after that, which is the integration of transportation links and the residential areas that the Western Megapolis region envisions. There is sort of, you know, areas called middle income housing somewhere in Athurugiria. There's high-end areas. There's some segregation, but they also need to get to different places. Are these well integrated, the transport plan and the housing plans? This is a question for Nihal and for Nayana.
Yes, now the transport plan, yes, it is also done by the participation of the megapolis. So in that one, they have already looked at the port city, and the same system that will be available in the city of Colombo will also go through the port city, and because of that, it will be well integrated, and there will be the hub of this transport link at PETA, near the Fort railway station. That is the mode transport. So with that, there will be greater integration of the port city as well as the other housing areas of the city of Colombo.
Nayana, beyond port city.
Beyond port city.
Yeah.
I would say it's a work in progress. The idea certainly is clear and present. It's very much on our radar. We've actually started analyzing the land availability along the rail corridors that are to be upgraded. So, you know, how much land can you actually stimulate for higher density development within walking distance from railway stations? The UD has done a pretty extensive analysis now on land availability, and that is something we want to operationalize. And we're trying to put this also into this middle income housing program where, you know, if a site that is going to be developed is going to be within 500 meters from a station, you actually get higher density and so on. So the answer is yes, the principle is understood and very well integrated, but acting on it and implementing it is going to be an iterative process, so we need to get through.
Okay. My last question I'll pose to you and Lakshman, could I think do we want to have the commercial now, and then we can come back for the closing comment?
You close it,
Okay.
then we will have the commercials.
So,
yeah.
each of you, in under a minute, if we agree that this cohesive community, if we think about the Western megapolis as the unit of analysis, and we want it to be cohesive, there were words like diverse, where coexistence is possible, where social and economic mobility is possible. If that is the kind of Western megapolis that we envision, what is the one thing you would change or do better or wish for? So what is your main priority from your point of view? What is it going to take? You get to pick one. We'll start, yeah, sure, Shankar.
Yeah, first thing is, first and primary thing, the key thing is the employment opportunities. You need to have employment opportunities for everyone, all spectrum of the population. Once you have an employment opportunity, making it informal sector, moving into formal sector, how to make, because I see a lot of informal activity in terms of employment happening all across Colombo. So how you are going to make it formal and inclusive in the entire, not only in housing, in the economics of the entire the megapolis. So that is very, very important, and that's a key.
So
That's
formalization of employment and opportunities for
yes,
increased employment.
yeah. So that is a
okay?
sustainable model.
Yeah, okay. Shivankar.
I would believe that with all this development that goes on and all these condominium buildings that we are putting up, there are two things that we sometimes forget that we need to address, and that needs to be addressed by the government.
One.
Okay, then I would say the final, someone said that we need to look at the whole life cycle. So we have to have a mechanism for disposal and reconstruction of condominium buildings. And I think we need to have the proper legislation in place. I think it is already known, it is in the process, but it's taken a long time. I saw a question asked by somebody whether the Bambalapitiya flats are going to be demolished and a new development brought up. What is stopping that is that we don't have the legislation currently to do that. If one or two people who own it, oppose it, there's absolutely nothing you can do under the current legislation. So I would actually wish for the correct legislation to be in place before all this development happens, so that not only the beginning, but we also look at the end. And we can actually look at it from countries like Singapore. We don't have to invent the wheel. They have mechanisms, which I don't want to go into right now, which can be adopted in this country.
So that has an impact right now on the kind of skyline we can
For
have,
sure.
and also maybe 50 years from now when you're going to have a next cycle of investment, right?
That's right.
Jeremy.
I think one of the key things is that from my point of view is involvement tends to be after the fact, where everybody has planning and those types of things in place, but actually sitting down and deciding what is actually required there's so many different agencies that you have to deal with to get to one place, that by the time you've spoken to everybody, it's either half finished or it's not or it sort of doesn't join up. And that's the biggest thing. For example, if you talk about transportation, there's a whole discussion about automated ticketing, et cetera, But basically, that runs on the same rails and tracks, if you like, from a connectivity point of view, as many of the other things that will be required for that. So my feeling is that at some stage, the whole base layer needs to be discussed as to what's required and spec'd out, and then that can be put into each of the sections very simply.
So that's really about big picture as well as who's at the table when that is discussed,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to Lalit.
Thank you. Just
I think
one.
Elana, we need to stop. 3:45.
I think we owe it 30 seconds from every panelist.
I see, okay.
Because you had technical problems.
Yeah,
so we didn't.
just 1 point. I mean, the future vision of the megapolis is, my vision is that our children, or in my case, grandchildren, would live in a society that was very nicely described by Nayana, that we live in an inclusive society where the children can grow up together irrespective
Yes,
of
but
their...
what does that mean in terms of what you would wish for now?
That is my wish, that the design and the systems that we put in place for the megapolis development would create that environment for our grandchildren to grow together irrespective of their differences.
Okay, great. Nihal, Senra, 30 seconds each.
Yeah, the most important thing, the one thing that we require for this system to work, in my opinion, is the reliable, comfortable, and affordable transportation for all people.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I think we are talking about megapolis. Housing, we can't take as a separate matter. It should be integrated solution. So like transportation and employment and schooling and hospitality, everything together only make a house and livable environment. So just talking about just building house is not going to work. So that's why we emphasize the decision-making organization like megapolis should be there to make a housing policy. The policy should incorporate all these other facilities.
Okay.
So it will be a viable,
Sure.
livable, and environmental housing.
Okay. So I'm not going to wrap up. So Nayana, as the most hardworking person in the conference, because you're on, I think, all but one panel, if I'm not mistaken. Two. Okay. You get the last minute.
Yeah, actually, I'd maybe take 30 seconds. I think in terms of housing, what I would like to see is a clear policy framework emerge over the next few months that considers all these varying viewpoints, because there's validity in all these perspectives. A policy framework emerge based on robust debate, an argument, and then some level of consensus, and a strategy that emerges that we can roll out over the next 10, 20 years to create the kind of society that Lalit mentioned about. So I think that would be my aspiration.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's give them a hand. Over to Lakshman and our sponsors.
Thank you. So we had once again, we were able to put together a panel of experts from multiple disciplines. We have private sector folks, we have private sector telecom, we have government-owned company, and then we have 2 urban developers, and then 1 specialized in housing, and then of course world's largest property-related services. So I think what we try to do is create that discourse where we get multiple perspectives, multiple models, so then we can have finally a meaningful solution that will fit to every segment in the market. And most importantly, we don't want to create that 1% versus 99% kind of a scenario in our society, how we can create an inclusive, cohesive society. So once again, thank you so much. One more thing, I'm sorry that we don't have a tea break, because as you know that we are a very content-focused company. Every single minute we try to get the content, but the tea will be served at tables. So, but if you would like to take a break, so please, go out, and if you would like to have some fresh air. But I'm sorry that we are not going to take a tea break because we need 2 hours or 1 hour or 45 minutes to the next session. So please put your hands together and thanks our wonderful panel once again. Thank you. Okay, thank you for all the service.
LBO Infrastructure Summit 2016.